streaming?
So this is live streaming on Facebook as we speak?
Yes.
Yes, the new book is called Injustice, the story of the Holy Land Foundation 5. Pleasure.
Oh, there we go. That might make sense. Okay.
There we
so,
go.
uh, Donald Trump declared the declared Jerusalem as the uh, eternal capital of Israel, which might seem like an innocuous thing, but it's actually a pretty dangerous situation. So give us a little bit of insight into why that is.
Well, I would defer to our guests. It's something that this was something that the previous presidents have refused to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, George Bush, Bill Clinton, they all talked about it,
Mm-hmm.
and they all spoke about it. But one of the things is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason why the world was so resistant on and refused to declare Jerusalem as the capital of Israel was based upon the United Nations agreement back in 1947, which was designating Jerusalem basically as sort of international city or a city not under Israeli sovereignty.
Right.
And this position of the UN is still remains.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about and of course Israel, I believe, captured part of Jerusalem in the '67 war, and so it was still because that was under Jordan's jurisdiction at one time. But again, just bringing it up to speed, that the Israeli government since then has been enlarging Jerusalem. Like the Jerusalem that we see today is not the historical Jerusalem that we all think of from the Bible. And the Israeli government illegally has been adding settlements and been enlarging Jerusalem. And so, but what I want to get to, and this is where I want to defer to our guests, is what do you think the ramifications for such a bold move from this White House, and what does that mean for the Palestinian people?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. This is great. I'm really liking this. So I think we can't separate Jerusalem and what happened today from the last 1,500 years. Jerusalem has been a Muslim and Arab city of great significance for the last 1,500 years.
Mm.
Now, over the last 70 years, 7 decades, the state of Israel has been in existence. Mm-hmm. And like you said, when the state of Israel was established, the United Nations resolution called for Jerusalem to be an own independent entity, not under any sovereignty of any state. Mm-hmm. Israel violated that immediately and took the western part of Jerusalem in 1948. And it did it in a violent way. It did it, through violence and through a massive campaign of ethnic cleansing, where entire neighborhoods, entire towns, and villages that surrounded the city of Jerusalem were Palestinians were kicked out, and Israel and Jews were given the city and became the Jewish side of Jerusalem and mm-hmm. declared the capital of Israel by Israel. I have a story in my book, In the General Son. My mother was born in Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. Okay. Her parents were colonizers; they were immigrants, and she was born in one of these really colonial spheres that were created by the Jews who immigrated within Jerusalem, within the Palestinian city. And she remembers that during 1948, she was already a mother. She was a young mother, and she was offered one of those homes in a Palestinian neighborhood that was just cleansed mm-hmm. of its people. In other words, the people were just left. So this is very real. So in 1948, Israel, through sheer brutality and ethnic cleansing, took the western part of the city, de-Arabized it, right, and Judaized it. Two very racist terms which Israel uses a lot. And that became the reality. In other words, nobody stepped up and tried to fight it. Of course, the Palestinians had no ability to fight it. And then it was never recognized, though. Every state, every country around the world that recognized the state of Israel recognized open embassies in Tel Aviv. It's not a single embassy in Jerusalem, and the consulates that exist in Jerusalem mm-hmm. were all in the Palestinian side of Jerusalem, because they were representing their countries to what was Palestine, right? Including the American consulate. The American consulate in Jerusalem is not part of the mission and does not report to the ambassador who sits in Tel Aviv. They report directly to Washington, D.C., because they're not connected to the Israeli embassy. So these are the historical facts that people need to realize. Nobody has recognized, nobody accepted the initial conquest of West Jerusalem by Israel. Then in 1967, like you said, Israel took East Jerusalem mm-hmm. and completed the conquest of all of Palestine, or what they call the land of Israel, mm-hmm. and including East Jerusalem. And from that point on, they said Jerusalem is one city, united forever, and it's all the capital of Israel. Once again, nobody recognizes, not a single country recognizes this, because it is the continuation of the violation of the international law and the United Nations resolution, which says that Jerusalem has to be its own entity.
Right.
Right.
Well, Israel violated many international resolutions and many international laws and resolutions. So now, over the last 5 decades, Israel has done in East Jerusalem, what it has been doing in West Jerusalem and the rest of the country, which is pushing out Palestinians and building these very beautiful but ghettos, very beautiful neighborhoods, but that are enclosed for Jews only. So once again, de-Arabizing East Jerusalem and Judaizing it. And on top of that, they also increased the size of the city, like you correctly said. But what the problem with that was that they took on a lot of Palestinians.
Right,
The
right.
Palestinians do not have the same rights as the Jews.
Really?
Yes, Palestinians have a special ID. Palestinians who live in Jerusalem have a special ID.
So wait a minute now, just to interject here, because a lot of us don't realize that. I remember when we first met, and you had mentioned that. So Palestinians. Now, remind you now, we're told over here that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. Yet Palestinians are carrying around their own special ID card, which is reminiscent to me and maybe the other people, like the Stars of David that the Nazis was having Jews to wear. Is that a correct comparison?
Well, they have their own special ID. Now it gets worse because actually the Jerusalem Palestinians have slightly their ID, their designation is slightly better than some Palestinians, for example, who live in other parts of the country. So it's all relative. But for example, I was born and raised in Jerusalem. I have an Israeli citizenship. I can come and go as I please. I've been gone for many years, but if I decide to go back, I can go back. I can go back to my house. There are no restrictions. Palestinians who have been living in Jerusalem, and their families have been living in Jerusalem far longer than my family, of course. My family immigrated in the 20th century. Some of the Palestinian families go back to the days of Saladin. So we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of years. They have an ID which is like an alien residence.
They are alien residents in their own ancestral land.
Yes. Now, unlike other Palestinians, they're able to travel throughout the country, but they are not citizens. And if they leave, they lose their ID. If they get a different kind of citizenship, I have dual citizenship. If I was a Palestinian, they would take away my Jerusalem ID.
Wow.
Because I'm an Israeli Jew, they don't. I'm an Israeli citizen, I can have dual citizenship. So they have their own unique identification, which means they're not citizens. So the process here is recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of the state of Israel. It means recognizing and legitimizing this violation of international law, this violation of human rights, and completely disregarding the fact that Jerusalem still is a largely Muslim and Arabic city, and is still one of the three most holy sites for Muslims. And so this is not just problematic for Palestinians. This is problematic for the entire Muslim world. This is Donald Trump, giving the finger to the entire Muslim world, saying, we don't care what you think, we don't care what you believe, we don't care what you feel. And I think this goes along very well with his other policies, like the travel ban against the Muslim countries, and the entire Islamophobic and anti-Muslim rhetoric and sentiment that's been part of his presidency. So this is the reality within which I think people need to understand. Historically, this has been and continues to be a Muslim site, a Muslim city. Historically, it was regarded as such, and while being a Muslim city, there are always minorities, Christian minorities, Jewish minorities, Armenians, others who are part of the mosaic, who are part of the reality. When you look at old pictures of Jerusalem, you see the Jews praying in their areas, you see the Christians praying in their holy areas, and you see, of course, it was a largely predominantly Muslim city. Now, Israel came and destroyed all of that. Just came in like a bull in a china shop and destroyed all of that, saying, this is ours, we're going to be sovereigns here, and that's that. And if you don't like it, you can leave, and if we don't like you, we're going to kick you out. And the process of Judaizing, the process of the ethnic cleansing goes on day by day, neighborhood by neighborhood, house by house, where you have settlers and Israeli bulldozers, and of course Israeli forces who are forcing Palestinians out of their homes, out of their neighborhoods, and immediately transferring them over to Palestinians. Now, Israel built a wall in order to limit the number of Palestinians that are actually residents of Jerusalem. So the absurd reality where neighborhoods that were actually part of Jerusalem and saw themselves as part of Jerusalem, Palestinian neighborhoods, are now out. So there's the Palestinian university in Jerusalem called Al-Quds University.
Mm-hmm.
It is on the other side of the wall. It's not in Jerusalem anymore. So Palestinians used to be able to, kids would be able to walk to college, walk to their university, or drive, or take a quick bus ride. Now have to travel an hour, 2 hours to go around the wall to get to their to Al-Quds University, which is a Jerusalem university. No, Al-Quds is the name of Jerusalem in Arabic.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
So within all of this, Trump says, yes, we accept everything Israel did. We accept the brutality. We accept the segregation. We accept the racist laws. We accept the ethnic cleansing and the conquest of Jerusalem by the state of Israel. And we don't give a damn about anybody else.
Right.
Wow. I mean, you said so much stuff, but I want to go back a little bit to what you said about Palestinians not being able to return to Jerusalem if they leave. What people don't understand, because we throw around phrases in this country all the time and we don't know what they mean. We hear people say things like right of return all the time. Is that what that refers to? That Palestinians who have been in Jerusalem or since for millennia, that is their ancestral home, because they're not citizens. If they leave, they do not have the right to return. Is that what that means? That right of return phrase.
Return refers partially to that. It refers mostly to the right of the refugees that were kicked out of Palestine when Israel was established. When Israel was established, it was established through a massive campaign of terrorism and ethnic cleansing. So about 1 million Palestinians were kicked out of their homes, and many were killed. And now we have about 5 or 6 million, close to 6 million Palestinian refugees living in abject poverty in refugee camps, excuse me, in Palestine and around Palestine. The right of return refers to their right to return. There's a United Nations resolution that says the Palestinians should be allowed to return, but they've been banned. One of the first laws that the State of Israel passed when the State of Israel was established in 1948 said that the Palestinians do not have a right to return to their land and to their homes. Jews, on the other hand, there's another law, that's the law of return, which says that any Jew anywhere around the world that wishes to come and become a citizen has the right to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because they claim Jews have a right, because we are the descendants of the ancient Hebrews who used to live in that land 2,000 or 3,000 years ago in biblical times. So Jews have a right to return because of a connection they may or may not have to an ancient tribe from 3,000 years ago. The Palestinians, who still have the keys to their homes,
Can't
the
be back.
keys to their land, and are sitting in refugee camps all over, and sometimes no more than half an hour or an hour drive from their very land,
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
and
wow.
are banned from returning. So when we talk about the right of return, it depends if you're talking about the right of return, which applies to Palestinians, or the law of return. Now, you add to that the fact that so many Palestinians were denied the right to return because they're Jerusalemites, and they decided to go overseas to study, or they decided to live overseas for a few years, or like me, they decided to have a dual nationality. They do not have that possibility. Their ID is revoked, and they can come back as tourists.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's deep.
What I wanted to get back into more is the political ramifications of this decision by the United States, because as I stated earlier, previous presidents had failed to, well, not failed, but had, even if they paid political lip service to it, they didn't actually go through
they
with
refused
it.
to.
Right. So it seemed like they had an understanding of the greater implications or ramifications that this might cause. What I want to know is that what would be, and I know we're not future tellers here, but what is the immediate ramifications that you see that could harm the United States politically by this?
Well, it's who knows, all right? I mean, the fact is that the United States just spat in the face of the entire Muslim world.
Yeah.
You can't backtrack that. Now, previous presidents, like you said, made the promise of doing it, but knew not to do it. It was a campaign promise that everybody knew could not and would not ever be fulfilled because it was madness.
Right.
Do not mess with Jerusalem. You cannot and you don't touch and you don't mess around with the status quo in Jerusalem, it's bad enough the way it is, and it's bad enough that Israel has been allowed to use it through the diplomatic cover and political cover and the enormous amounts of money that America gives it to do all the things that it did in Palestine and in Jerusalem specifically. But to recognize it is really one step too far. It's a red line, and that's why there aren't any embassies in Jerusalem, and there is no recognition of Jerusalem as the capital city of Israel by anyone. Not as the capital, but as a city within Israel.
Right.
It's not recognized. Israel does not have a right to be there at all. Well, now here comes this American president, which everybody knows is really not very stable and does not have a grasp of foreign policy or anything else other than his own immediate interests, for that matter. And he decides to do this. Who knows what the ramifications will be? What we know for sure is Palestinians are not going to sit tight. The Muslim world is not going to sit tight and do nothing. My hope is that as Palestinians start their protest, even as we speak right now, that the Israelis will hold their fire and not shoot as they normally do. Because when Palestinians protest, and these are largely unarmed protests, or engage in civil disobedience actions, the Israelis come and shoot immediately.
Yeah. Sort of like what we get over here.
Yeah. We're very familiar.
The black experience in America is very similar to what Palestinians are going through. And now they're going to be shot, and many are going to be killed, and you know what I mean. So the hope is that the Israelis will be at least wise enough to hold their fire. But I suspect they probably won't. So I mean, who knows how this is going to end, and who knows what the ramifications are. But it's clear that the entire Muslim world is now terrified of what's going to happen next. And again, this does not benefit American interests. This does not benefit the peace process. Not that there is one. It does not benefit the prospects, or I should say, for peace. It only benefits the state of Israel. It benefits Benjamin Netanyahu because this is a huge victory for him.
Yes. Yes.
No other Israeli prime minister was able to accomplish it. Here, he's been able to accomplish this. You know, and he's already the most powerful politician in Israel, and the most skilled politician, unfortunately.
And those are not always positive attributes.
Yeah, and I think that it benefits somehow the Trump family and the Kushner family because there's a connection there to Israel in terms of the Kushner Foundation, which sends millions and millions of dollars to the most extreme and violent groups within Israeli society. And so there might be something there that somebody's getting to benefit, but certainly not the common good. This is nothing for the common good, quite the opposite.
Wow.
So when you talk about who this benefits, an interesting part of this whole conversation about the entire Israel issue, the Israel and Palestinian issue, is the issue of people of faith, right? And our understanding of the significance of Israel and Jerusalem. Because there is an aspect of this that feeds into the alt-right kind of what I like to call the white Republican Jesus, the white conservative Republican Jesus understanding of the Bible. And part of that, it comes from, what do we want to call it? Like apocalypse theology, I guess?
Yeah, apocalyptic theology.
Yeah, where the idea is that for the Messiah, Jesus, to come again, the world has to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. That's a part of biblical end times prophecy. If you know that the Bible, especially Revelation and Daniel, are books of allegory. They're not history. It's not fortune telling. It's allegory that represents other things. But a lot of people take these books as the literal interpretation of what needs to happen for Jesus to come again. So for some people who are of the fundamental Christian, evangelical, white conservative Jesus, and even some black Christians, they believe that this is the step that has to happen for Jesus to come again. The problem with that, though, is that the United States is not God. So just because the United States says, or the president of the United States says, we recognize Israel as the capital or Jerusalem as the capital of Israel doesn't mean the rest of the world recognizes this. And because of that, we can't make Jesus come again. But I say that in response to your comment about he's like, I know it's one of those things where when you research it, you study it, and then you hear people explain it. What else can you do but sit there and go, what am I supposed to say to that? I mean,
Well, mixing faith and politics is toxic.
mm-hmm.
Toxic combination.
Mm-hmm.
Not mix faith and politics. And we see that Israeli groups of mixed faith and politics are the most extreme and the most violent groups that are there. We know that here in the United States, groups that mix faith and politics. And this whole and the problem is that the narrative that was accepted is a narrative that completely ignores the last 1,500 or 2,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
So there are biblical times, and then there's today.
Right.
And nothing else matters. Nothing else happened. You can't do that. Number one, biblical times, the way they're described in the Bible, the Bible is a book of faith. It's not a history report.
Right.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
what the Israelis did, Israel was built as a secular country.
Mm-hmm.
They made the claim that Jews are not just a religion, but Jews are a people, they're a nation. And so in the Bible, the Old Testament is their history book. And Palestine is their homeland. So now you've got a nation, you've got a history, you've got a country. Let's go get them.
Right.
That's right.
But it's not a history book. It's a book of faith. There is no historical proof that there was a King David or a King Solomon or any of those figures. Now, we know that because we know that both Christian and Jewish Zionist historians and archaeologists have been digging the country upside down to find anything, any scrap of evidence that these figures existed in the Bible, the history book, and there is no evidence. So if you believe it, that's fine, it's your faith.
Mm-hmm.
But to turn that into history and then to claim that because, even if it was true 3,000 years ago, that these things happened, that today it's okay to throw Palestinians out of their homes. It's okay to massacre thousands of people in Gaza and keep 2 million people in Gaza without water. Mm-hmm. It's okay to engage in a campaign of ethnic cleansing where we're kicking people out of Jerusalem, Palestinians, and putting in Jews instead. That all of this racism and segregation and violence is somehow okay and it's sanctioned because 2,000 years ago there was a King David. I mean, it's absurd. Mm-hmm. And really, if you have people of faith, that's what their God tells them is okay. In other words, if there is a God and we believe in a God, then that's what this God wants us to do is kill people and act out of racism and segregation. Mm-hmm. And say that one people are chosen and other people are not chosen. And I have to put this in too. I have to mention this. In Jerusalem, the most Orthodox community, the most ultra-Orthodox community in the oldest Jewish neighborhood in Jerusalem opposed this.
Really?
They opposed this. They have representatives in New York. They just had 20,000 people in Brooklyn in a conference. 20,000 of these ultra-Orthodox Jews saying, we oppose this.
Wow.
And if you look on their Facebook page, they have a Facebook page called, one called True Torah Jews and one called Israel versus Judaism.
Mm.
Oh, wow.
They stand and they oppose this, and they got message after message after message saying this is in opposition to Jewish law, it's opposition to common sense, it will only bring more violence. And by the way, these communities have opposed Israel from the very beginning, saying that the creation of a so-called Jewish state in Palestine will only bring violence and misery, and they were right. So, in other words, I think this has to be also taken, understood well, that the oldest and most Orthodox, most religious groups, Jewish groups in Jerusalem are in opposition to this. And also, I'll say this, since I'm talking about them, right now, they're out in the streets of Jerusalem protesting and getting beaten and thrown around by the Israeli police because they're refusing to serve in the military.
Oh, wow.
So they've been exempt for many, many years, and now the Israeli Supreme Court just struck down the law that gave them the exemption. And so we've got thousands of them in the streets every single day protesting. And they are being treated, again, if you look at the images, we haven't seen Jews being treated this badly since, since before World War II.
Wow.
It's horrifying to see what the Israeli police are doing to these Jews because they're refusing to serve them. They arrest them, they put them in solitary confinement. They go into their neighborhoods and it's just beyond belief. And these people are standing strong and they're saying, we will not serve in your army because it contravenes Jewish law.
Oh,
because
wow.
it contravenes Jewish law besides, and of course it's immoral. And we will not participate in this. So this is also a part of the equation that people have to understand. Jerusalem is a mosaic. All of Palestine is a mosaic, but particularly Jewish. I mean, it's predominantly Muslim. But it was always a mosaic with Christians and Jews and different denominations of Christians, Greek Orthodox and Armenians and so on and so forth. And these people came, the Zionists, and just kicked it all and said, no, we're taking it all, it's all going to be ours. And the Jews, these Jews oppose it, just like the Muslims and the Christians of Jerusalem oppose this.
So you mentioned twice the word or the category or title Zionist. Please explain explain what a Zionist is. Explain what that is, because I am convinced that people also don't understand that.
Zionism is an ideology that says that Jews have a right to colonize Palestine because they are the descendants of the ancient Hebrews. So the ideology says, like I said earlier, all Jews are the descendants of the ancient Hebrews, which is not completely true. If you look at the color of my skin, I don't think there's a single cell in my body that shows that my ancestors came from that part of the world.
We didn't want to bring that up, but okay.
And then I bring it up because it's ridiculous. And like I said, that the Old Testament of the Bible is a history book and Palestine is our homeland. And Zionism is the ideology that founded the state of Israel, which claims that Jews deserve to have their own homeland, they have their own country, and if Palestinians have to pay the price and be kicked out, then so be it, but we have no choice. And again, the very Orthodox Jews about which I spoke, from the very beginning, from 1900 and even before, are already warning, saying this is going to be catastrophic. Zionism is going to bring nothing but violence and trouble to the region. It will harm Jews. It will harm Jewish, Muslim, and Jewish Arab relations. And it will harm the relations that Jews have in the countries in which they live. In fact, one of the posts that they posted on their Facebook page, it says Jews have many capitals. The American Jews have Washington, D.C., and the French Jews have Paris, and the German Jews have Berlin, and the Australian Jews have...
Right.
A list saying Jews live all over the world, and they're fine. Palestine is not a Jewish state. It's not a place for a Jewish state, and Israel does not represent Jews. So that's what Zionism is, and the Orthodox community never accepted Zionism. Of course, gradually more and more Jews did accept Zionism. But that's what Zionism is. It's the ideology that says that Jewish people are allowed to go colonize Palestine and kick out the Palestinians and do with them as they will. That's basically what the ideology is, and that's the foundation of the state of Israel, and that's why Israel is not capable of compromising. That's why there can never be a peace between Israel and the Palestinians, because the basic foundation upon which the state of Israel was founded says that the entire country belongs to the Jewish people. The Jewish people, not the state of Israel, the Jewish people. The state of Israel is really just a guardian. It's just a mechanism by which it's run. But really, the land belongs to the Jewish people. That's why 97% of the land can only be sold or leased to Jews.
97%.
The vast majority of the land can only be leased or sold to Jews.
So what's left for Palestinians?
That's the intention. The intention is nothing supposed to be left for them.
Palestinians kicked out with such speed that is it's beyond belief. And then what they did, they put them in little blocks segregated from the rest of the country. So if you're an Israeli Jew like me, you live in an entirely different reality, different sphere than Palestinians do. And you can live your entire life and not see or engage with Palestinians because the segregation is so severe, is so deep, both through the education system and through the reality that was created on the ground. It's a very small country, so they did a very good job with the segregation. Wow. And you've got the wall that segregates and encircles Palestinian towns. You've got the laws that keep Palestinians out of Jewish communities and out of Jewish cities and out of Jewish neighborhoods. And you've got the so-called security issue, which says that we can't come close to these people because they're dangerous and they're terrorists and they want to kill us. So they really rounded it up well, and they've created a segregated system that whichever way you look at it, there is no way for the communities to mix. And really, this is our land, this is our country, and you know what? Tough luck. They're gonna have to go or die.
And yet they control. And well, I got two points I wanted to make. You know, it's funny that when we talked about the history of the state of Israel, yet the early Zionists, like Theodore Herzl and them, they didn't care about actually going to Palestine. They were willing to go to Uganda. Or they were willing to go someplace else. And then came this this unholy marriage, I call it, between the Zionists and the religion coming together. But we also know, Miko, that all Jews aren't treated equally in Israel. I mean, we've been hearing stories of racism against Ethiopian Jews, black Jews from America who have immigrated to Israel. The sterilization of black Jewish women.
Yeah, Ethiopian Jews.
Yeah, Ethiopian Jewish women. You know, so I mean, so we know that it's not just the Jewish identity that that is supposed to be this unifying force. That all Jews aren't created equal in Israel, or treated equally.
Well, no. First of all, you know, the initial idea was to bring rich European and American Jews. That was the idea, to create a white European colony. That didn't work because the Jews didn't come. Very few came. So the state was established, and they didn't have enough Jews. Even after the Holocaust, very few Holocaust survivors wanted to go. So out of about 2 million survivors that were in camps in Europe after World War II ended, less than 10% actually immigrated to what had become Israel. And many of them left because they were treated very poorly.
Wow.
So even Europeans, so the European Jews weren't coming, even the ones who suffered the most, even the ones who were the victims of the Holocaust and survived, did not go.
Wow.
So then they said, well, what do we do? What do we do? So they looked at the Arab world, and the Arab world had very large, very successful, very well-established Jewish communities, enormous ones in Iraq, in Kurdistan, which is not exactly the Arab world, in Yemen, in all over North Africa, in Syria, in Lebanon. And so then they appealed to them, and they started to bring them. And these were communities that had no interest in leaving their own countries because they were doing very well. You know, the Middle East and the Arab world was very kind to Jews. And finally, they managed to create an environment where it was not conducive for Jews to remain because there was this conflict between Israel and the Arab countries. And the Jews, and exactly what the Orthodox Jews warned was going to happen, which is that the Jews' loyalty was being put in it was being questioned.
Right.
Are they Jews that are loyal to the Jewish state, or are they, you know, Moroccan or Egyptian or Syrian Jews who are loyal to their own state? So that was very problematic. When these Jewish communities did come, and many of them came by, you know, an entire community, you know, ended up coming. It was sprayed with DDT because they're basically Arabs.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
The exception was that they're Arabs, are probably dirty and they're brown. So they were sprayed with DDT and they were put in camps, and they were not allowed to leave these camps, and they were used as labor.
Oh my gosh.
What they wanted to do is they wanted Jewish labor. They did not want to rely on Arab labor. And so, and they were sent to all these God-forsaken spots, the places that European Jews wouldn't dream of going to build new cities and new towns, which they did. And they were second-class citizens among the Jews. So they were not treated as poorly as Arabs, but they were certainly not as treated as well as I. And I remember, I'll tell you it's not funny, but an anecdote. When I was in, I don't know, 5th or 6th grade, I remember suddenly the grown-ups in the school talking about this thing called integration. Yeah. What's integration? We don't know, but it's a big word. Now, the school that I went to was the good, white, European, you know, good kids from a good neighborhood school. A few blocks away were the neighborhoods of the brown kids, the brown Jews who came from Arab countries.
Right.
From Yemen and Iraq and so on and so forth. And they had their own school. They did not go to our school. They went to their school, even though it was just a few blocks away. Why? because the assumption is that they're brown and they're Arab, so they're not going to be professors and leaders and so forth like we are.
Wow.
They're going to be, the janitors and street sweepers and, stuff like that. Well, one day somebody came up with this idea that we need to have integration. So they brought those kids from that school, which again was only a few blocks away, those neighborhoods, from the dark neighborhoods, to our school. Now, we're still not in the same classrooms.
Right.
We were in separate classrooms because we don't mix. We had better teachers, better.
Oh my gosh.
Of course, we are going to be leaders because we're white and sophisticated and European, and they're, backward because they're Arab and they're brown. And so we were in separate classrooms. Now, when I was in Palestine this last summer, I was arrested. And I was actually spent a night in jail. So I was in jail for about 30 hours. And who would you meet when you're in jail? Prisoners. And who are the prisoners? They're these Jews. These are dark Jews. You don't see people like me in jail, right? So these guys are sitting around, and after a while, you start talking politics. Of course, what's a white guy like me doing there? The first assumption was, interestingly enough, was that I had trouble with the wife, that I beat my wife.
Really?
That was an assumption, yeah, for some reason. But then, and I tried to stay away from the politics. Eventually, we started talking. So they were chastising me for being this white privileged guy helping the Arabs, these damn terrorists who want to kill us.
Now these are dark Jews. These are Arab, right?
Jews, a couple of Morocco, one
right?
The socioeconomics are that's the reality there. The browner you are, the lower you are, the whiter you are, the higher. And so I told them this story. I said, look, you're right. I am the problem. But not because of what you're saying. I'm not the problem because I support Palestinian rights and because I'm out there protesting with my Palestinian brothers and sisters. I'm the problem. And then I told them this story. And one of the guys in the jail, in the cell, there are about 10 of us in the cell. By the way, no ventilation, no air, cigarette smoke that you could, from years and years and years, like a block of smoke. Anyway, so by the end of the 30 hours, we're already talking. And I said, I'm the problem, but not because of that. And then I told him the story. And one of them was old enough to remember. He was maybe 10 years younger than me or something. But he still remembered that as a kid.
Wow.
Suddenly they got to go to the school over there.
Right.
The white kid school, the Ashkenazi kid school. And he said, in fact, he had a nephew that now teaches at that school. And look how far we've gone. Now this is between Jews and Jews.
Oh my gosh.
Forget Palestinian Arabs. Forget integration. We were only 10 minutes away from Arab neighborhoods, Palestinian neighborhoods. This is Jerusalem, Now they brought Ethiopians, real black Jews. Where do you think they're going to go?
Right.
Wow.
They're at the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. They put them in communities. They have these special centers that are called absorption centers, which were designed for immigrants to teach them the language, give them some work skills, and send them off. Well, they've been there for years. They become slums because they do not get. Now these, like this particular one that I know of, is real not far from where my family lives. So it's very close to a very white, very upper middle class neighborhood. So you'd think the kids would go to the school there, right?
Right.
No, the kids are bused 2 hours away to go to a special school with ultra-Orthodox for some reason. And even among the schools that they go to, because they're blacks, they don't want them with the white kids because the assumption is that they're not as, capable.
Oh my God.
So they're special classes. So they don't learn the language, and they don't learn the skills, they don't learn anything, and years go by, and they go back and they live in these slums. No jobs, no education, no future, and all they can see across the street is a nice shopping mall, and beautiful homes, and beautiful neighborhoods that they will never be a part of.
Wow.
But they're black, so in a racist society that we already know is even racist among its own people, in other words, among Jews, you bring Africans, what do you expect?
Right.
Wow.
There's no reason to expect that they won't be treated even worse than everybody else, and of course they are treated worse than everybody else. And when they protested early this year, I think there was a massive protest because they, surprise, surprise, they get frisked, they get arrested, they get held by police, they get beaten by police more often, and so on and so on, right? So they were protesting against that, And in their protest, they were saying, "Why do you treat us so poorly? We're not Arabs."
Wow.
Wow.
In other words, we're
As if
supposed
that's
to be,
okay.
Wow.
As
Oh
if that's
my
okay to
God.
treat Arabs like that, you know?
we're supposed to be elevated.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Oh.
It's, and there's really nothing shocking or surprising about this, because when you have a state, when you have a government, and you have a political entity that is built on racism, it's going to be racist.
Mm.
That's
Mhm.
just the way it's going to be.
Mhm.
And the state of Israel is an apartheid state. It's a racist state. It's a violent state. And there's no reason to expect anything good to come out of it. And now Donald Trump gave it his stamp of approval, which, come to think of it, is really not surprising.
True.
He gave a stamp of approval
Mhm.
to the racism, to
Mhm.
the apartheid, to the segregation,
Mhm.
and to the violence, which of
Yeah.
course
Oh
are
my
all
gosh.
values that I believe he shares with them.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
And so here we are.
Mhm. So I have to ask, because I'm sure our public wants to know, how, Miko, did you come to being an advocate for Palestinians, for human rights for Palestinians and oppressed Jews, being an Israeli citizen yourself? What did that journey look like for you?
The gentleman's
There
son.
we go.
Yep. We just
That's what I was
opened the door for
hoping you'd do.
Yep.
There's a book. Now, the title of the book says it all, because the title of the book is The General's Son. You know, I was the son of an Israeli general. I grew up in a very privileged sphere, in a very, safe, clean, and all the resources that I needed, water, and school, and everything.
Mhm.
Second part of the title is Journey of an Israeli in Palestine. What does that mean? What's Palestine, or what's Israel? What's an
Mhm.
Israeli?
Right.
Where's the journey? It's a very small country. But what I did was I embarked on a journey as an Israeli out of my very safe sphere, a very privileged sphere, to the sphere where the other lives,
Hmm.
the oppressed, the
Mhm.
occupied.
Mhm.
And sadly, we naturally we don't do things like this. I think we're driven to do things like this only when there's some kind of a disaster or a tragedy that takes place. In my case, it was the death of my niece. She was killed in a suicide attack in Jerusalem.
Oh my.
She was 13 years old.
Mm.
It was 1997, and so that was really what drove me into this journey. But that's the way life is. I mean, we're always driven out of our comfort, out of our sphere, as a result of something bad.
Mhm.
That's just kind of the way people are, sadly. But anyway, so I began this journey, and I realized there was another sphere, that there was a Palestine. I didn't know that there was a Palestine. All I knew is that there was an Israel, and the Israel is where I lived.
Right.
And I knew that there were Arabs.
Mm.
And we have problems with these Arabs, and we are not treating them well. Maybe we should treat them a little bit better. But there was no question that we had the right to be here, that there was any question in my mind about the legitimacy of our existence, the legitimacy of the state of Israel. My grandfather signed the Declaration of Independence. My grandparents immigrated. My dad was a general. I mean, of course, I supported this, and I loved it, and I was proud of it. And then I began this journey, and I'm realizing they're not even getting the same amounts of water that we're getting.
Wow.
Oh
They're
man.
not. Their schools look different. Their roads are potholed. They do not have the resource. Even the ones who are citizens. And then you start learning more and more and more, because the journey continues, and then you realize there's actually nothing dangerous about this. There's nothing dangerous about going to Palestinian to Arab neighborhoods. There's nothing dangerous about having friendships and creating relationships. Quite the opposite. And so then once the barriers fall, you stop seeing another. You just see people.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? And then who cares? Their skin might be darker, their skin might be lighter, they might be speaking this language or that language or this accent or that accent. But once that barrier falls, and it's not a simple thing for the barrier to fall, but once it falls,
Right.
then you just see people. And when you start seeing people, then you realize the injustice. And then you either decide, are you going to stand for it or are you going to fight it?
Mm.
And I couldn't in good conscience just sit around and pretend like everything's fine and go on about my life, because it is number one, there's so much promise. Palestinian society, both Israeli and Palestinian society, highly educated societies, highly productive societies. There's so much good that can come out. Israelis are now there. We're like, I would say we're like the whites in South Africa. We're immigrants. We're you know what I mean? We came colonizers as as occupiers. But now that's the reality. You know, the whites in South Africa are Africans. They call themselves Africans. You know, that's just the way it is.
Right.
So Jews are there, and as much as many Palestinians, I'm sure, would love to see them all leave and have their country back the way it was, that's not a realistic expectation. At the same time, we must not, absolutely must not accept that Jews have exclusive rights.
Right.
Jews have some kind of privilege. Nobody is allowed to have privilege. What needs to happen, and needs to happen immediately, is that everybody, all people of conscience, fight against this privilege, fight against this idea of a Jewish state, fight for this real democracy with equal rights, fight for compensation for the Palestinians, fight for the right of the Palestinians to return, you know, reparations, which blacks in America still have not received, and I think should receive. And maybe this is something that can start some kind of a chain reaction or kind of a snowball effect. But these are things we all must fight for, to create a reality where there is justice, to create a reality where Israelis and Palestinians, where Palestine becomes Palestine and is free without racism and without checkpoints and without the military and all of that. And then you have a reality where people can live together. Then the barriers fall even faster. But that's what I think people of conscience should do. And it goes beyond race, and it goes beyond nationality, and it goes beyond anything. You know, because once you see, like I said, reparations are reparations. People who have been subjected to violence and injustice deserve reparations.
Well, Israel's been getting them. Israel's been getting them.
Israel, the Jews have been getting it. By the way, the Jews did not get it. The state received it.
Right. The state received it.
Right.
Even today, Holocaust survivors in Israel who are very, very old now are not getting their pensions, are not getting their rights, are too poor to buy medicine and heat their homes because they're so poor, and the state refuses to give them the reparations.
Are you kidding?
Wow. I am so glad that glad that you just said that, because a lot of us, including me, didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the Germans paid billions in reparations.
Yes, they did. We've talked about that.
When we talk about reparations to blacks in America, well, that's a red line. You can't talk about that. You know, we should have to pay for whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
Talk about reparations for Palestinians. Well, they need to forget. You know, nobody should forget anything. Quite the opposite. You know, and there's plenty of money. The fact that Israel gets almost $4 billion a year that it doesn't need. That money can go for that. You know, the U.S. spends who knows how many $1 billion on wars. They can take a fraction of that and start paying back their debt to the black community in America, to the blacks, what they've done. So I mean, it's a silly excuse. There's many ways to do this.
Yeah.
But then once you embark this journey, and you see the possibilities of justice, then you can't just sit still anymore.
So true.
Right. So what's next for you, Miko, as we wind this down?
Well, what's next? This isn't over. This struggle isn't over. So I'm still doing that. I just published another book. I mean, it's coming out in early February. It's called Injustice: The Story of the Holy Land Foundation 5. The Holy Land Foundation was the largest Muslim charity in America, and after 9/11, they closed them down, claiming that they were supporting terrorism, that they were supporting Hamas. And by 2009, 5 men were put in federal prison. 2 of them for 65 years. Shukri Abu Bakr and Hassan El-Ashi each got 65 years in federal prison.
Oh my gosh.
Farid Abdelkader got 20 years, and Abdulrahman Aouda and Mohammed al-Nazaim each got 15 years. They are as innocent can be.
Wow.
They did nothing wrong. This was a witch hunt. This was an obstruction of justice that is beyond belief. This was a case where the government and the judicial system, the judges, the juries, everybody decided to stick to the line, to stick to the narrative, to not accept any of the evidence that showed clearly that these people did nothing wrong, showed clearly they did not support terrorism, but nothing helped. None of the appeals helped. Supreme Court wouldn't see it, and these 5 men are in prison. Now, it's a story that has several layers. One layer is the Israel-Palestine U.S. layer, the international layer.
Right.
Part of it, because pro-Israeli groups were behind taking down this organization. The other layer is here with the United States, the racism and Islamophobia and the way Arabs and Muslims are treated.
Right.
And the third layer is the personal layer, the layer of the families, the layer of the personal story.
Oh wow.
just heartbreaking.
Mm.
So I tried to put it all together. It was a difficult story to put together, but I had a lot of help, and it came out. And like I said, it's coming out. So that's coming out, and so throughout the spring, and I expect into summer, I'll be traveling and talking about that and connecting that to the larger story of the injustice in Palestine. As I'm sure you know, the United States has its own share of political prisoners. Women who should not be in prison, but are in prison because of an injustice, and that I think ties into that as well.
Oh my gosh, I hate that we only have an hour, because there's so much more that we could talk about, but that's just why we have to have you on
That's
again.
why we're going to invite you back on, and we hope that you accept again.
And we really appreciate the time you have taken to shed some light into an issue that very few people, I think, in this country really understand, really have any real insight into. And we really hope that whatever people heard from you tonight will spur them to act on behalf of justice. And we really do appreciate you not only writing The General Son, but this new book that tells the story of oppressed and marginalized people who are directly impacted by the system today. Just to let people know that, yes, systems and governments still do it. And they're a threat to peace-loving people everywhere. Tell us on Facebook, YouTube, website, where people can find you.
Well, I have my own blog, MikoPeled.com, MIKOPELED.com. I have a Facebook page, Miko Peled. I'm on Twitter. I'm everywhere. You know, if you go on YouTube, Google my name, Google General Son, there's lots of lectures. If you want to invite me to come and speak or do a church at a college anywhere, just write me a note on my blog or a message on Facebook. I'm easy to find. Keep up the good fight. That's all we all need to do.
All right.
Thank you. We return the blessing to you, and thank you so much for joining us tonight, Miko. And everybody, thanks a lot for joining us. We'll provide you a link with all of the social media presence, online presence for Miko Peled, so you can read his blog, you can get both of his books, you can show up at some lectures, one of which I'm sure will be at our church again. And